WNBA fining and suspending a Seattle Storm co-owner after she allegedly cursed out two young fans, two teenagers, that were sitting courtside as they held signs thanking Sophie Cunningham for protecting women's sports.
Indiana Fever guard Sophie Cunningham is known for her moves on the court. But on the sidelines, it's her recent comments on transgender athletes causing controversy. That's when they say a woman, later identified as Seattle Storm co-owner Celeste Keaton, approached them.
I thought she was going to be nice, and then she started screaming at us and cussing at us. And then she told us that we were effing insane.
I do want to read that the team's majority owner, her name is Jenny Gilder, issued an apology. She says, "We are aware one of our co-owners made comments to two fans in attendance at last night's game. We apologize that this happened. Everyone who attends a Storm game deserves to feel welcome, and we remain committed to creating an inclusive environment where every fan is treated with respect."
One of the girls, her name is Anna Lee Wilson. She's a 16-year-old runner from Washington State who has taken a stand. Why has she taken a stand? Because she has had to live these policies. Actually, Anna Lee, she placed second at, I believe it was the Kashmir Junior Olympics regional track meet in the 1600. She lost to a boy.
It's even more ludicrous that you do have Sophie Cunningham, a female athlete herself, very accomplished in her own right, coming forth and speaking that truth that men shouldn't play in women's sports. We want to protect women and girls, and the backlash she is receiving from Democrats and left-wing figures across the country is astonishing. They are clearly very out of touch with the American public on this issue, which again is an 80-20 issue.
Horrendous look. WNBA world rips the Seattle Times as columnist resigns after Sophie Cunningham trans column gets scrapped. Oh, this one's a doozy. Seattle, particularly the Seattle Times, in the spotlight again. Horrendous look. WNBA world rips the Seattle Times as columnist resigns, quits his job after Sophie Cunningham trans column gets scrapped. Oh, man, the Seattle Times. Let's get into it. Here we go. If you haven't been following this drama, Sophie Cunningham comes in as, quote-unquote, the enforcer for Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark, arguably the best WNBA player, Women's National Basketball Association player ever. She is epic. She's like Pistol Pete of yesteryear. I mean, her passing, her shooting. I mean, she launches basically from half court and hits it. Sophie Cunningham she scores about 10 points a game, 6 to 10 points a game. She's more of a role player, but she is not afraid to scrap. And Sophie Cunningham, she's been in Sports Illustrated swimsuit, okay? She's tall, blonde, blue eyes, from Indiana. She's a patriot, loves America. The rest of the WNBA, unfortunately, it is what it is. It's female athletes. There's a lot of lesbians, and so they support the trans community because don't really understand why. But Sophie Cunningham, she's been accused of being Caitlin Clark's enforcer. And more recently, she was a ring girl for UFC. That was epic, fun to watch. And she had a Adidas shoe that sold out like that. And the rest of the NBA is like, oh, she's getting so much attention. Well, Sophie Cunningham came out and said, we shouldn't have biological men playing in women's sports. And WNBA just lost it. And so then a couple of NBA players, recently retired NBA players, said, you know what? For the purposes of playing in the WNBA, I identify as a woman. WNBA had to get together this committee to figure out what a woman was. They can't really do it. Now they're studying it. The owner of the Seattle Storm had some really nasty things to say to two players that were supporting Sophie Cunningham in Climate Pledge Arena. The owner of the WNBA got suspended, of the Seattle Storm got suspended. The coach of the Indiana Fever, Sophie Cunningham's team, she basically supports, by and large, the whole trannies in the WNBA. And I'm just like, what is wrong with you? And a bunch of other players have said, oh yeah, I welcome having men compete as women in the WNBA. And you're like, Bill Burr does a bit where he's like, yeah, I want to see some guy just like we're talking about that are trying to get into the draft for the WNBA, put on a sports bra and go out there and score 100 points a game every single game, because that's how bad it would be. Well, we've got a Seattle Times columnist who's been there for, I think, 10 or 11 years. And I've read his stuff. I talked with my son Kieran this morning. He knows a lot more about sports than I do. He follows a lot of sports. He bets on sports. And he said, yeah, I've read that guy's stuff. It's good stuff. So despite him working for the Seattle Times, which is basically the only paper in the Pacific Northwest, because of its size, they've gobbled up everybody else. So he was going to write an article basically saying, hey, here's what it's like to be a female competing from the perspective of two girls. Here's what it's like to compete against males in the sport. And Seattle Times wouldn't run it. And he had a number of other articles canned as well. Not shocking. Not shocking. Indiana Fever star Sophie Cunningham created a media firestorm with her comments several weeks back regarding trans athletes taking part in women's sports. She said no. She said protect girls. I'm completely down with that. That makes absolute sense. This whole having men walking around in women's locker rooms or women's restrooms, what in the world is wrong with you if you think that's okay? They are pretending. They've got big dong and balls in the women's restroom, women's locker room. Not okay. Not okay. That's just weird, right? Now, people from all corners of the sports and political news worlds are chiming in with their own takes. And so what the WNBA took away from this is Sophie Cunningham hates trans athletes, which she never said. She just said, protect girls and women in girls and women's sports. Kind of reasonable, right? Kind of normal. Just, we can't have that. Can't have that. WNBA columnist resigns. So we've got Matt Calkins, a columnist for the Seattle Times. He announced his resignation after 11 years in his role for reasons that got plenty of people fired up. Calkins tweeted on Thursday that he was resigning after an article on trans athletes was reportedly scrapped by the paper. Out of that. After 11 years as a sports columnist, the Seattle Times decided to resign. It was entirely my choice, and it was not an easy one. The impetus was the Seattle Times declining to run a column I wrote from the perspective of two female student athletes who were opposed to competing against biological males. I'm going to digress for 1 second. Here's another story that's going on in Puyallup, which is down south, probably a 45-minute drive from downtown Seattle. There is a court case being moved through the court system. And it was a female wrestler. I know, female wrestling's a thing. And they are amazing athletes. I mean, yeah. I watched a lot of wrestling in high school because my best friend was a wrestler. So a female competing down in Puyallup was going up against a 190-pound male that she didn't know was trans. And the guy ended up putting 2 fingers inside of her. And she's having that happen. And she's crying out to her mom, he's inside me. And then the coach and the DA or the athletic director, the AD is what I was trying to say. The athletic director, they kind of put a little kibosh on the whole sexual assault thing. And now that's going through the system. Charges have been filed, and you're like, because they can't really prove it. I mean, do you have footage of that happening? Well, no, but she says it happened. I mean, why would you make that up, right? Horrible, terrible. That's why you shouldn't have males competing in girls' sports. They're just so much stronger, especially in wrestling. It was one of several pieces of mine that have been spiked, and I no longer felt like I could properly do my job as a columnist. I lay out the situation in greater detail in the link below, but I want to say that I enjoyed my time with the paper, find the talent there to be immense, and have no animosity toward anyone who works there. It was just time for a change. This is why I resigned. I really wanted the column to run. I didn't think it would, but I felt obligated to try to get it in. Toward the end of last month, before the Seattle Storm hosted the Indiana Fever, I spoke to people attending a rally in support of Sophie Cunningham outside Climate Pledge Arena. And then there was counter-protesters. The whole thing is just, what are we doing? Let girls play girls' sports. boys play boys sports. If you want to have a trans community, trans league, by all means, nobody's going to watch it. Nobody's going to watch that. No. Fever Guard had recently taken a stance against biological males competing in women's girls sports, and a few dozen folks showed up to express their gratitude for her position. I don't know if you've seen those shirts that XXXY. I mean, it's so basic. That's a woman. That's a man. Let them play in their league. They play in their league. None of this cross. Oh, yeah, we're pretending that he's a woman. One of them was 16-year-old Analia Wilson, who lost to a biological male in track and field race in 8th grade, was holding a sign reading, "Thank you, Sophie, for speaking up for girls." Pretty basic stuff, right? Speaking up for girls. I don't know if I was going to write something at that point, but after she allegedly got cussed out by a Storm co-owner during the game, I felt like I had to weigh in. The Storm co-owner is just an angry lesbian. Let's be honest. Just angry lesbian, doesn't like anything that doesn't go with the WNBA and lashes out, right? And she basically had, a 5-game suspension as an owner. Terrible look. Terrible look. Just, what's wrong with you? She got really upset at 2 young girls supporting Sophie Cunningham, which I don't know if you know this, but she's a woman. What's wrong with these people? One thing Wilson emphasized to me at the rally was that she wasn't anti-trans. Another student athlete named Frances Stott, who said she's endured daily verbal abuse after refusing to play against a biological boy in a basketball game, echoed Wilson's sentiment. So that was the thesis of my column, which you can read here, that supporting the separation of biological females and males doesn't automatically make you transphobic. So let's stop throwing those labels around. But the WNBA's argument is so weak on letting men play in women's sports. It's so weak, right? They're just like, oh, we're so inclusive. We're just all about inclusion. Well, yeah, but then you're not going to allow NBA players in the league because they would absolutely dominate 10 ways from Sunday. It's not even a question. It brings up the point that that's absurd. That is absolutely mind-blowingly absurd to have a 6'10", 250-pound male. He would dunk every single time up and down the court. He would be blocking shots from all over. I mean, he's 6'10". He's got an 18-foot wide wingspan, right? And the guy can jump. Brittany Griner can dunk. She's that 6'9" player that had a weed pen and got stuck in Russia for 9 months. That whole thing. And we gave up Russia's biggest arms dealer for Brittany Griner. Okay. All right. I sent a draft after talking to my editor the morning of Friday, July the 31st, telling him there was no rush to run it. He told me a day later that he and others were looking at it, but that it wouldn't be ready for Sunday's paper. Monday night, I got an email saying that his boss was hoping to talk to the top 2 newsroom editors about it on Wednesday. No feedback had been given to me. Thursday afternoon, my editor informed me that it wasn't going to run because I didn't tell him I was doing this in advance. Yeah. I didn't buy this reasoning. I wouldn't either. If that were the case, the piece could have got killed on the spot, not passed through the hands of multiple editors over several days. My response? To resign on the spot. Good. Good for you. The Seattle Times is so progressive. It is so left-leaning that it hurts. I stopped reading it years ago, but the reason I would read it is because they've got the biggest talent around as far as media goes from a print organization in Seattle. And so oftentimes they have pieces that nobody else even touches on. And from that standpoint, I will look at their stuff. But for the most part, when I have to look at the Seattle Times headlines each morning, I'm like, yep, that's either wrong or that's biased or that is designed to confuse. But look at the audience of the Seattle Times. It's a bunch of mentally ill, mentally challenged progressives who can't work their way out of a wet paper bag. That's the audience. So it would be shocking if this kind of thing didn't get killed, right? Because they're so progressive. They're so liberal. It's so great. So great. Yeah, last night, was it the Atlanta game? I think it was the Atlanta game. Somebody threw another dildo out on the court in an NBA game. They've been doing that. I mean, such a 7th grade boy thing to do. Hey, all those girls out there playing basketball, let's throw a massive rubber green dildo onto the court. It stops play. It's just, disrespectful and kind of annoying. The first time it happened, and it's happened multiple times, kind of funny. All right. Okay. But then after a while, if somebody steps on that, gets hurt, ruins their career, not cool. Dildo, not needed on the court. This may come off as an emotional decision because he resigned on the spot, but it was exactly what I was prepared to do. This, after all, was one of several columns of mine that had been spiked at the Seattle Times. One was a piece questioning whether players for the U.S. women's soccer team were really the victims of discrimination in their equal pay lawsuit. Another was a more general column on cancel culture in sports. The last, written shortly after George Floyd's death, implored people to listen to state champion basketball coach Mike Bethea, a black man urging the public not to stereotype cops. These are not Seattle Times typical headline stories, are they? No, but they're relevant, wildly relevant. But you won't see that kind of reporting typically here in Seattle by the Seattle Times. You'll see everything that's just, the left is great, or we're geniuses. The common theme, all of these challenge prevailing newsroom narratives and likely would have triggered the outrage mob. And here's the story on this one is biological males shouldn't be in women's sports. I mean, could you imagine telling somebody out of the 1970s, okay, here's the deal, fast forward to 2026, the WNBA, which stands for Women's National Basketball Association, is going to allow men to play in it. They're pretend men. They dress up, as women and they identify as women, but they're not women. 6'10", 250 pounds. Wild stuff, right? I mean, could you imagine? People from 1970 would be, what? Why? Well, because this is why? Why would you think that it's okay to have men playing in women's? It's just not right. It's wrong. And you know what's interesting is they allow it at the elementary school level. They allow it at the middle school level. They allow it at the college level. Riley Gaines, right? But at the pro level, no. And because they know it would be awful for the WNBA. But the WNBA has got themselves in this virtue signaling chess match, and it's checkmate. They either allow the men into play, which would make an absolute mockery of the league, which is held up by the NBA. The WNBA does not make money. They bleed money. So all these girls saying, we need to get paid more. Don't get me wrong, I don't think they're great ball players. I think they're great ball players. Indiana Fever has a guard who, Kelsey Mitchell. Kelsey Mitchell had 37 points last night. She's had 21 games over 20 points. I mean, she's great. Sophie Cunningham, great to watch. Caitlin Clark, great to watch. Lexi Hull, great. They're fun to watch. They're fun to watch. And then, you've got some of these people that are questioning the whole men in women's sports, and this stuff comes up. So you've got the outrage mob that the Seattle Times doesn't even want to touch, right? I've always thought it was a columnist's duty to generate discussion on the most hot-button issues. It is. To avoid such topics was to leave the reader shortchanged. I guess in the end, I just didn't feel like I could do my job properly anymore. Right now, I'm in the tenuous position of trying to defend my resignation without sounding like a malcontent. So let me say, I'm very grateful for the 11 years I had at the Seattle Times. Talent there is immense, and the editors let me have a lot of fun with their stories. I also realize where the brass is coming from. The mob is frightening and does not forget. Lots of seemingly brave souls have submitted once activists got their hooks in them. If I had more people depending on me, perhaps I'd act similarly. Yeah, I mean, so he's basically saying, I get it. We don't want to have the woke mob coming down on the Seattle Times, right? I mean, you literally have players in the WNBA who are females who are welcoming men who identify as women to come into their league. Oh, yeah, I'd play against one. Well, how about when he teabags you as he dunks on you for the 30th straight time? How's that going to be fun to watch? Oh, he's got his 14th dunk in the first quarter. This is great basketball. Love it. He's got 18 rebounds at halftime. He's on his way to another 100-point game. But he's a athletic woman. You know what I mean? Just makes no sense. But in thinking about this decision, I keep going back to an Albus Dumbledore line. I don't know who that is. We must all face the choice between what is right and what is easy. I should probably know who Albus Dumbledore is, shouldn't I? Yeah, probably. There's a lot of people I don't know who they are because I'm a real estate guy. That's my excuse for not being more well-read. To be honest, I'm scared shitless right now. All right. I have no idea how the next few months or years are going to play out, but that fear beats the indignity of being muzzled. Yeah. Plan for now is keep writing in this space. Maybe that will spawn a new career. Maybe I'll be a dental assistant in 2 years. I genuinely don't know. No, you got a career as a good journalist, reporter, however you want to say. All that's certain is that I'm done holding back. The best things in life are free. Speech being at the top of that list. Oh, Matt Calkins, former writer for the Seattle Times. Absolutely insane that we have to be talking about things like why men shouldn't play in women's sports. It makes absolutely no sense. These are not women. They might identify as women, but it's delusional at best, especially when you get on the court. So it's interesting, again, that they've allowed these women to have women compete against men up until the highest level. And then they're like, oh, we support it. But they're not going to have guys from the NBA coming in because that would be absolute disaster. And so they have to come up with a reason. And there's like 6 different options the WNBA can do as far as kind of, oh, we've got a new definition of women. Great, let's hear it. Does it have to do with chromosomes? Because if it does, that might be kind of a telltale sign of how this whole thing is just it's virtue signaling, right? We want to be supportive. We want to be inclusive. We want to have one guy dunk on all the other girls every single time he gets the ball. How much fun would that be? All right. 79 points. We're entering the third quarter. It's laughable at best. Now, and just now, you are getting to a point with the WNBA where there's actually some interesting storylines going on and some players that people want to follow. Not all of them are white. You know what I mean? There's a bunch. I watch Angel Reese. She is a great rebounder. She could have won against the Indiana Fever the other night. She came down with a rebound right in front of the basket, muffed it. Somebody else muffed it again. Angel Reese she can't shoot. She can't shoot a lay-in. Her offense is horrific, but she's such a good rebounder, and they call it me-bounding because she puts up her shot and gets her own rebound. So, you know, I watch that stuff. I mean, there's enough good athletes in the WNBA where I will take a look. I follow these athletes on Instagram. You know, some of you that are into TikTok, you can do the TikTok, or you could do X, which is, you know, Twitter. But this column right here, this was interesting. It'll be interesting to see what the Seattle Times response will be to this. But again, this is Seattle. Seattle is wildly woke. Our sports teams are wildly woke, and it's not a shocker that the Seattle Times spiked this guy's column. But then he's like, you know what? I've had enough. I've had enough of this, and I'm moving on. So good for you, Matt Calkins. I wish you the best. What do you say, right? What do you say? Hey, good luck out there. You can do it. Yeah. And you can do it in an environment where you don't get your articles basically, hey, thanks for the good work, but we can't run that because that woke mob out there, we're the Seattle Times. It's just what we're doing. So there's that. All right. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for joining. Love to have you subscribe, hit that notification bell. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.